Okay, we're recording live.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for stopping by. This week on Impact, we have somebody very special. She is the founder of TreeSisters.org, a global women's movement spanning over multiple countries. This organization has funded the planting of over 20 million trees. I think it's more like 23 million trees now at this point. Unbelievable work they're doing. Guys, if you like what we're doing, please like and subscribe. But without further ado, Clare Dubois, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm really good. It's lovely to be here. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Hi, Claire. Thanks so much for being on our show here. We've been playing around with some technical stuff here back behind stage, and now all is great now. Claire and I had a really nice chat about a year or so ago, and I just thought she is one of these game changers, one of these people that's really making a difference, and we just had to have her on our show. So but before we start, what we do is we do something called two truths or three truths and a lie. There's a couple lies or a couple of truths there, and Devin and I have to guess which is the lie. So is that okay, Claire?
Go for it.
If you can remember what you fired us over here. Okay, number one is I encountered a tiger shark while swimming. See, that's pretty gnarly. Number two, I have hung out with hundreds of little green men. Yeah, that's interesting.
Cool.
What's that? There's that film, the animated film where the little tree guys, what's that name of that movie?
I don't know.
It's one of those Japanese anime movies.
Princess Mononoke you're talking about?
Yeah, Princess Mononoke with the little tree people,
the
little tree spirits. Yeah. Very cool. I wonder if those little green men. Okay, and then the next one is Claire worked internationally for over 2 decades, coaching business leaders and facilitating group behavior change processes. So, okay, so I believe that one. All right. And next one, I started out as a taxi driver.
Oh, damn. Holy
Wow.
smokes.
And I've got one last one here. My life was saved by a tree.
Wow, I want to meet this person. She sounds really cool.
Yeah, right?
Absolutely.
I'm just like, wow. That's a tiger shark. I'm a diver. Actually, Dev's diver too, and I've run into a few sharks, but never a tiger shark. Leopard sharks. But whoa, yeah, no, never. Yeah. Oh, what do you think, Dev?
Man,
what do you think's a lie?
So tiger shark, holy green man, business, taxi driver, tree saved your life. Oh man, that's tough. Like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna do this one. I think maybe it was a different type of shark. It's a little play there, and that's the lie, that it wasn't a tiger shark, but it was a different type of shark. I'll go.
It was a tiger shark.
And
I was swimming with it, and it was looking into my eyes, and I was looking into its eyes, and it was a 12-footer.
Oh my gosh!
No!
And I had such a shock because we were swimming along, my buddy and I, and he was looking at the shark, and I was looking at him. I thought he was looking at me, and he was looking at the shark, which was literally swimming with us. There was 3 of us going along, and I suddenly realized he wasn't looking at me, and I turned, and the shark was literally next to me.
Wow.
And I spat out my mouthpiece because I screamed, and I spat out my mouthpiece, and I thrashed, and I cut my arm on coral, and there was blood everywhere.
Oh no!
What
the heck?
And it shot off. It shot off, and that was one of the most frightening moments of my entire life, where you literally think, oh my God. And blood is green underwater. It's really interesting. It's not red, but a shark can smell it, and miles away, and it was right there. And my buddy wouldn't get out of the water because he wanted to go follow the shark, and there I am bleeding. And so I was just like, okay, fine, break all the rules. You stay in the water, I'm going. And so then I'm trying to find the boat. Like, where's the boat? And then getting to the boat, and then trying to get out of the water when your adrenaline has gone so completely bonkers that you can't actually function, like nothing's functioning. And the worst bit being you're half on the ladder.
Yes.
And your legs are still in the water. And you just
that's the worst part.
That the shark is underneath you and is coming for you. And I'm screaming, like, get me out of the water, get me out of the water. And And they get me out and they're just like, what's all of, what? And I was like, there's a shark. And they were just like, well, we're swimming in Shark Gully. Of course there's a shark. And I'm like, no, it wasn't a reef shark. It was huge. It was like 12 foot. And they were like, describe it. And I was like, it was covered in these like stripes. And they were like, you stayed in the water with a tiger shark? And I'm like, no, I got out of the water with a tiger shark.
Wow.
Yeah, goodness. No, that's a true story. And we were famous when we got back to land. People were just like, are you the guys that were swimming with a tiger shark? And it was just like,
where were you? Whereabouts were you?
The Barrier Reef in Australia.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
In Shark Gully. We were in Shark Gully, but Shark Gully was supposed to be where the reef sharks hang out, not the tigers.
Yeah. Honestly,
looking into a shark's eye, it's like looking at death because they have no pupils. It's like mercury silver.
Yeah, and they have
it's like indescribable, especially when it's literally like this far away from you, just like completely emotionless, sort of reptilianish, sort of just like a dead eye. Oh my God, it was just, that was, I grew up watching Jaws, which I should never have done. Ever.
I know, so did I. Yeah.
But that sort of nailed it for me. Like, I am officially really scared of sharks.
It was interesting because I did a dive on the Great Barrier Reef back in 2003. We went off, I don't know where we went off in one of the boats, and then they have all these wharfs, like what are they, big wharfs out in the middle of like an hour out, right? And so you dock the boat and you go in there and you get the scuba divers all get in your boat, and then all the snorkelers stay within this huge net. There's these massive nets, right? I'm like, well, what are the nets for? Like, okay. And they're all in these blue suits, they're flipping around and they're looking, and then we go outside and we're diving outside. We didn't come in across any sharks, but it was just like, that's very curious. They're out here, but you have the nets around and the snorkelers are inside, but we're going on the outside of the nets. And so
you're shark bait.
We're shark bait. Yeah. Fun.
Okay, so which is the lie?
Yeah, Nige, you got to get a swing.
I don't know. I don't know. I like that. I want to know about the little green man, but I say the taxi driver. I mean, but that's
it.
Oh, it is.
Was not a taxi driver.
You're not a taxi driver. Okay.
Was not a taxi driver.
Wow. So what about these little green men?
Well, my mother and I used to hang out in stone circles a lot in my teens and 20s, and in the UK there's a lot, and you find them in the oddest places.
There are.
And there was a very large stone circle outside this place called Penrith, close to where we used to live, called Long Meg, and we went up there one day, three of us, and I was standing there and I could see thousands of little green men working at the stones like computers. And I'm like, I'm going completely mad. Like, I just couldn't stop seeing them, but they weren't like with my eyes. They were with second sight. Oh. And so I'm walking around. I didn't say anything. And then my mother comes up and she said, can you hear their spaceship? Can you hear that vibration? There's a ship right above us. And I'm like, no, I can't hear anything. And she was like, well, I'm sure that must be where they've come from. And I'm like, who? She said, oh, the little green men. And I was like, okay, I'm not going bonkers. And then my third friend, my friend who was with us, marched up to me and she just said, what are they doing to the stones? And I was like, who? And she said, the little green men. I was like, okay, fine. We're not, all three of us independently are not bonkers. We've got a large amount, like, 1,000 odd little green men, like waist height, completely green. I mean, my story about them is that they are that they photosynthesize, that they're like human leaves because they're not clothed and they're humanoid. They've got arms and legs and hands and faces. Can't remember whether they had ears. I don't think they had ears, but the little green men, bright green.
Oh my gosh.
And that's not my only meeting with them either. So they are out there, and they are real, and they didn't pay any attention to us whatsoever. Like, we weren't there.
Do you think they were in a different dimension or something?
Yeah, I do. I think they was. I'm a Trekkie, so I can say things like
they didn't know that you were there. Yeah, they were out of phase. Yeah.
They were in a different. Yeah, you couldn't see them with your human eyes, except we all could, but we also couldn't. I mean, but I have had an interaction with a little green man where I was looking at him with my eyes, and he was standing there, and the other person that I was with could also cleanly see them. So they do. Also see them. Yeah, they can also. I mean, we're not alone. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah,
We're
I mean, there
definitely
are,
not
like
alone.
you said, there's hundreds and hundreds of these stone circles in the UK. I was watching there's a lot of really great documentaries that we've been watching during the whole COVID thing, and we watch a lot on the UK and England, and there's the ones on the stone circles, and it's just absolutely fascinating stuff. I mean, they're every, and then you go all the way back to the Druids and the timelines of, you know, them being built and all that. And yeah, incredible stuff. Yeah. And
Well, I'm
then
glad we've got the important stuff out of the way.
yeah. Well, no, now we're getting to the juicy stuff here. We're just kind of trickling down here. So I have to say, so I go back to your history and all this stuff, but your life really was saved by a tree, I believe, right?
Well, it could have been.
Could have been.
It could have been, because I was swerving on ice. I was banging against, like in the UK, those tiny little back roads where the sides of the roads are built up. So I was in like a funnel, you know, I was hitting like earth banks on either side, and I was heading straight for a very steep corner with an edge, which would have taken me over an edge, but into a very steep field. So so had my car not been stopped by a tree, I would have gone over this edge. And I don't know, you know, I could have survived. I could have had a really nasty crash. I would have had a nasty crash either way, but we don't know. But we can say that a tree stopped me from going over an edge, which was always, to me, the metaphor was not lost on me. Let's put it that way, because I was literally on my way to a meeting in London. I was late, which is why I took a back road.
Oh, okay.
I was speeding. I woke up late, and but I was heading off to a meeting with a communications team to try and hand them this idea I had for a Western reforestation revolution. And you know, I was fresh out of this experience in India working with Project Green Hands, where I was studying their social strategy around how to mobilize people en masse to restore their environment. And I'd been distilling their whole strategy down to these 7 points, and I was like, okay, now I need somebody to pick this up. Now I know how to do this. Like, can somebody else just do this? And then I didn't make it to the meeting, and instead life said, no, it's you're doing it. And that's what happened in the crash. You know, the tree stopped me. There was a flash of blinding white light inside the car, and inside the white light were 2 words in New Times italics, which I remember because I hate that font, and it just said the experiment. So I'm looking at these 2 words, the experiment, like right in front of my nose. And this voice, male voice, it's like somebody turned the radio on in my car. It was like that loud. And it just said, humanity is running out of time, but it's not over yet. It's going to take all of you rising to the challenge to get through what's coming. The single greatest threat facing humanity is fear of failure, but you can get over fear of failure by calling everything you do an experiment, because you can't fail an experiment. You can only learn. And I even wrapped around a car, thought that was amazing. And I said, so what's the experiment? And back came, you have to reforest the tropics within 10 years.
Right.
And then,
then
my life flashed before my eyes.
And
I saw all the steps that had been leading up to that point, including meeting Lynn Twist multiple times and knowing that I'm supposed to be fundraising for trees. She's a very good friend. And, and then it got to now, and I was just like, you know, this was always coming. And then it shot and did a forward lapse. And I saw you're growing, like an organization, you're a front person, you're on the global stage, you're blah, 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 blah. And I just froze, and I was like, no, absolutely not. And the voice just continued. And it said, you have to mobilize the women are the missing piece, the women are the womb carriers, and Earth is womb. Women and nature share a common history. What's been done to one has been done to the other. You know, it talked about the desecration of the feminine. It talked about feminine consciousness being the consciousness of seasons and life cycles, and health and nature's consciousness, and that the dissociation from that was allowing us to destroy in the way that we were, and that coming back into sacred reciprocity with nature through that shift of consciousness back into feminine principles was the path. And it said, your project is called TreeSisters. It's a crowdfunding mechanism. You have to make it as normal. Oh, it was like, this was not my idea. you have to make it as normal to give back to nature as it currently is to take nature for granted. Just that. Huge. Like saying, okay, you've got to flip humanity's consciousness on its head.
Yes.
You're going to crowdfund from the masses and channel that money to existing reforestation projects in the tropics. Blah, 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 blah. Women have to remember who and what they really are. Feminine consciousness has to be reinstated or it's over. End of transmission.
Mm-hmm. My
So,
goodness. It was like a blueprint.
It was a blueprint. And that was only one. There were 3 projects that came in that car crash.
Oh,
and but TreeSisters was just like, I sat there and I was like walking up the road, picking up bits of car, crying my eyes out. And I got back home and I rang my partner who was at the meeting. And I was like, I'm not coming. I'm sorry. I've just written off his car. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And he was just like, are you all right? And I was like, yes, I'm fine. Why are you crying? And I was like, because I was given a job and I don't want it. And he was like, what do you got to do? And I was like, well, I've got to reforest the tropics and I've got to shift consciousness back from a consumer, like from mindless consumption to conscious restoration. And I've got to help women remember what they are. And he just went silent. And then he said, well, someone's got to do it. And so then I tried not to do it for 9 months. I had 9 months of like excruciating depression, just sitting in the absence of any of the skills needed to pull this thing off or even to start it. Like I was a coach and a therapist, a healer, a psychic, I was a loner and I didn't hang out with women and I didn't even particularly like being a woman. And and it was just like, well, you want me to teach women what it means to be a woman? I haven't got a clue. It's just like, so I was just like, okay, well, I'll try and do something for trees because I knew that was in my path. I'd known that for years. I just didn't know what it was going to be.
Right.
And I was all ready to do that with Project Green Hand. So I was like, okay, I'll do everything that they've just asked me to do, but I'll do it for everybody. So I started setting up an initiative, Tree Cities and something else. And everything started off with like, yeah, this is amazing. And then it crashed and each crash got worse. Like it got to the point where life was pulling the rug out from underneath me so severely. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be like, I can't remember who I am. What am I doing? I have to go back to my notes and just like start again from scratch.
Yeah.
And in the end, I was just like, okay, I get it. I'm doing something wrong. What is it? And the same voice came back. It only came twice. And it said, you can do all of that, but you do it through the women.
Do it through the women.
And then I asked what a tree sister was, and I was given these 5 points, and I realized that it was a 5-pointed star. And I went home and I drew this 5-pointed star, and I looked at this thing, and we were given a change tool, a framework of change that was rooted in 5-element acupuncture. And it's basically a behavioral tool that helps explain why the loss of the feminine principle has caused climate change, and why the reinstatement of the feminine principle is the answer, and why therefore women are needed to actually be part of the reinstatement of the feminine principle. Because what I will say about TreeSisters is this is not just for women. We're trying hard to help women get over the horrors that we've lived through for however many thousand years, that has basically meant that a vast amount of our gifts and capacity are not brought to the world for fear of what happens to us when we bring our gifts. And what's required is everybody. And what's required is everybody reactivating their feminine consciousness so that there is a relatedness to nature that means that we cannot simply blindly destroy it and then wonder what's hit us. That can only happen if we log back on relationally to nature in a way that shifts our consciousness so that our behaviors change in relationship to our consciousness. If we stay severed and out of relationship and not able to feel our indivisibility, we're just going to tromp ourselves through our remaining ecosystems and go off the edge of the cliff, which is what we're doing, frankly. So there is I get it. I got it enough to say, okay, I'll have a go, and I've had a go. But the bigger truth here is that, and this is not a dismissal of men, but patriarchal consciousness, which is the shadow masculine, has driven destruction because it's created an extractive economy that requires the death of nature in order to thrive. And so all of us have inherited a dominance mindset over nature because of the severance from it. Men and women, all of us, every gender has inherited that. And then it's a case of, okay, well, what actually has to happen for us to shift our consciousness, shift our perspective? And that's all of us. Everybody on this planet needs to wake up to the fact that we are not superior to nature. In fact, it's the biggest lie, and it's ridiculous, because anybody thinking that we're a superior species would destroy its own life support machine has to seriously ask the question, why are we doing this? Do we not care about our children? Do we not care about ourselves? Why do we think money at the expense of everything is going to feed us when there's no habitable planet left to produce food? It's like, we're not acting terribly sensibly here, but it's an inherited mindset and very deep cultural conditioning, and what I would call a momentum of consciousness that is driving us. Normalized destruction is driving us, and we have to flip it. And that's the question that anybody that's environmentally awake is sitting with. How do we flip it en masse fast enough for people's behavior to shift in a way that can actually make a difference?
Yeah, it's fascinating what you're saying, because I personally have had some incredible things happen to me in the past 10-12 years, since 2010, since our family went deep into the Amazon rainforest with Lynn Twist, the Pachamama Alliance. But so I'd been involved in various business entrepreneurial conclaves, and like you said, most of them are run and attended by men, right? The 85% men and maybe 15% women, maybe. And it being in the male dominated, in the business world, it's a bit of a macho thing. It's like it's like the guys are always trying to outdo each other, right? But then the connections that I had inside these groups are mostly like good, real connections with the women, or the feminine, right? The women. And I've had women come to me. Bonnie Meyer out of California, she encouraged me to join a different type of a conclave, because if I could have a chat inside the conclave and it was all men actually, and just kind of have a conversation about sustainability, the environment, what's going on, and global climate change, all this stuff, and just help to kind of just change things a little bit. But all these messages that I have received like this have all been from the feminine, or from the women. And it's and I mean, when we went into the Amazon, the people that attended the journey with us, pretty much all of them are women, and they were just game-changing women. You had Lynn Twist, you had Bonnie Meyer, you had all these other women that were really starting to make changes in the world, and we've been connected with them for years and years and years now, more than the male side of the people that I was connected. So it's I don't know. There's this. I've been feeling
it's inherited.
Quite a few years that there's a lot coming from the feminine side, and then it's just been so positive seeing. I mean, you look at the Prime Minister of New Zealand and all these other, in Germany and whatnot. It's just like, okay, there's the women are making a big move here for the positive. I believe. I don't know. I've just been seeing it.
Well, it's coming, and it's not easy. And I really want to underline here that we've all inherited this mess.
Right.
I really, it's like what has happened to the human experiment. Men have been as damaged as women have been, and just in different ways.
For sure.
And what is it that caused men to need to assert themselves over women so brutally? 400 years of witch burnings, 400 years of systemic murder of women as an economic model for the church. Where is the loss of self? Like, where was the loss of self in a man or in the masculine, that his sense of self could only be achieved through status, dominance, and power over other? That's not the natural state of the masculine psyche. Something's happened, and what was there? Was it because matriarchy existed before that, and had matriarchy and goddess culture existed for so long that there was like a backed up sense of invalidation in the masculine that meant he had to come down and stand on her in order to, to big himself up. And what is it that is still playing out in between the masculine and the feminine, you know, in our world, that still needs the masculine to assert himself in a particular way? It's like all those macho men with their brilliant brains, you know, if their brilliant brains can be joined to their heart in such a way that the new definition of greatness is through reciprocity, compassion, regeneration, everybody served, you know, but the masculine tendency is this, you know, it's this hierarchical ascendancy of like, is that, and I think that's testosterone more than a man. Like the testosterone has a vertical axis, and estrogen is cyclical. So we tend to be more horizontal. We tend to like, so we've got different wiring, and they're not wrong. That's the thing. But somehow we flipped out of balance, and but both are needed. And that's what Tree Sisters is based on. The map that we have, which is cyclical, which is a 5-pointed star inside of a circle, which is, like I say, the map of 5-element acupuncture. It goes feminine, masculine, feminine, masculine. So the left side is the open mind, the open heart, and the open body, and then the right side is the open body, the expressive body, the expressive heart, and the mind that is directing. But the feminine principle has to come first, because you need to plug in emotionally to self, other, and nature to know how to live to serve them. So the relational aspect of us, the heart-based aspect of us, the body intelligence part of us that can plug in, is the feminine principle in each of us. The relational, instinctual, intuitive, feeling self that can feel how things are, so that the masculine aspect of us knows what to do. Right. So if the feminine doesn't come first, the masculine's just running amok. Oh, there's a forest, let's cut it down and build a city. There's an ocean, let's overfish it, because it's not in any felt relationship. It has no sense of its indivisibility. So the masculine in its dominant state, where it's not able to feel, is dangerous to life. And that's what we've got.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's what we've all bought into, all of us, women, men, everybody, everyone in between. You know, it's like, because what's been normalized is extraction and consumption without any thoughtful consequence, because we can't feel that it's us that we're destroying when we poison everything. So the feminine principle has to come first. And that's why I eventually said yes to Tree Sisters when I got that map, because I was like, oh, okay, that's the flip. That's why they're saying feminine consciousness has to be reinstated. Because if we can't feel our relationship to life, we will just continue to trash it. And that's what we're doing. And then, so the big question is, how do we awaken that?
In everybody.
Yeah. And women have got a decidedly big role in that, because that's our wiring. That's what we're for. You know,
that's why I have these incredible conversations with all these amazing women, is because it's from a different perspective. It's in more of a perspective of nurturing and caring and regeneration, as opposed to, you know, I hate to say it, you know, raping, pillaging, and whatever, like, you know, the pirates and, you know, so it's just these conversations, they're just so engaging with these incredible women. It's a completely different conversation. It's a completely different conversation.
And one way of looking at that is literally, we are hormonally wired to tend and befriend. We are hormonally wired to ensure the health of the family. We're wired that way. And men are wired to protect it. Men are wired to go out there and do the hunting and the raping and the pillaging. You know, I mean, let's have less of the raping and the pillaging, but they're out, you know, but the two come together. One is the, you know, and we've all got both. It's in all of us. So we get into this dangerous territory of just like, men are this and women are this, and it's just not that. And it's certainly not that in our world now, because there's more genders than I know what to do with. But inside of that, we have got these core tendencies that arise both in our energy bodies, because the chakric systems of a man and a woman are opposite and therefore interact, but also our hormones. You know, we're wired differently. We have different capacities. And neither are better or worse. They're designed to operate together. But what's interesting is, in the map that I was given, the feminine actually comes first, and the masculine serves the feminine. So the masculine is here to husband life into its fullness. And that's just like, oh my God. So the first time I ever, and I lay this map out on the ground and I get people to walk around inside it. And the first time I did this with a group of men and women, I always used to do it with women because it was Tree Sisters and I was trying to figure out how to do this global sisterhood thing. But the first time I put men and women in there, what I do is I turn everybody towards the masculine principle. So everyone's facing the right-hand side of the map, because that's what we're incarnated into. That's what we're all growing into. We're growing into a patriarchal world where the feminine has been negated. That's been normalized. And here's our system. Our system is the dominant masculine. And then I got all the women to step back into the left-hand side of the map, which is the open mind, the open heart, and the open body, and reclaim it energetically, like stand there, feel their love, feel their hearts, feel their bodies, feel their connection to the planet, feel who they are outside of what they've been taught, and just stand there energetically, like tuning into that, and then did nothing. And I waited just to see what would happen. And one by one, the men turned around, and two of them fell to their knees. One burst into tears. One was raging. He was so angry with his own sex. One of the crying ones just said, oh my God, finally, I know what I'm supposed to do. Finally, I know who I am. And he was on his knees and he was like, I'm here to serve the feminine, and it wasn't like he was bowing to the women, but he was bowing more to the side of his own nature that knows that he's part of nature. And when he knows in his body, in his beingness, that he is part of nature, then how he lives is going to completely change. He was like, finally, I know what I'm for. And all it took was the feminine in that system of which he was a part being plugged back in. And that's what I think women need to be doing. That's what I'm trying to do with Tree Sisters, is help women plug back in. Because if enough of us can access that deeper consciousness, then it shifts the vibration on the planet. Right. And that's the big question. How do we shift the vibration on the planet?
Yeah. And aren't we opposite? Like to the animal kingdom, isn't like the feminine is, like the lion, the lionesses, and the isn't it opposite to us?
What do you mean?
Isn't it like the feminine is the more dominant, has the more dominant role than the males in a lot of the animal kingdom?
I don't know. There's an awful lot of interesting things go on in the animal kingdom. Like, it freaks me out that certain species like eat their men's head as soon as they've had sex. That's a really interesting design fault. We've got a lot going on in nature, but the bigger thing about nature to me is that it is not severed from its sense of indivisibility. And more, when you start to log on consciously, you realize that it is entirely aware of us in a way that we're not aware of it. So it's not living in a state of separation. And I did a listening session with Pat McCabe a little while ago, Women Stand Shining, a Dene activist who I love dearly. And she was just like, the reason my people live in humility and learn from the natural world is because we understand that we are the new kids on the block. Everything else has been here for billions of years, figuring out how to live in right relationship with each other, completely indivisible. And we arrive and we're just like, oh, it's a tree, cut it down. Oh, exactly. And we don't have the wisdom. We haven't been here for long enough to understand our role in relationship to everything. It fascinates me that working with magic mushrooms, for example, you're talking to beingnesses that have been here for billions of years.
Yes.
And you wonder why they have the capacity to show us to ourselves so completely in relationship to all that is. They have been here, but we think we're superior. We look at this little mushroom and we just think, oh, it's a mushroom, I'm going to eat it. But that mushroom holds an awareness and a consciousness that has been part of the fabric of this world for billions of years. There are levels of consciousness and evolution in nature that we can't even get our head around. We don't even understand it, and we're going to destroy it before we have a chance.
That's right. Exactly. And then the mycelium that connects everything underneath, the
everything.
The trees and the mushrooms, they're symbiotic, and they need each other, and we just think the mushrooms but it's not. There's just so much. Devin's
communication system.
Yeah,
it's a global brain.
Yeah, you've been doing a little bit of, or mushroom stuff, or my wife Rake and I, we've been kind of getting into mushrooms the past couple of years. We're doing a lot of hiking, and we're photographing them and just researching them. And yeah, and and then Paul Stamets, I mean, his talks are just unbelievable.
Outrageously brilliant.
Unbelievable. Actually, Devin introduced us to Paul Stamets and his Joe Rogan talk, and then his the show that he did. Yeah, I mean, it's something that everybody's got to see. Like you said, mushrooms have been here billions and billions of years. They've survived. They survive in the dark, and they, there's a lot of consciousness.
They're like the interface between life and death.
Right.
Yeah, they are an interface, so my last journey with mushrooms, I've only had two. I'm very late to this game, but they changed my life completely. They showed me themselves a little bit like the Milky Way, but on the planet, like interfacing with everything, but this consciousness that is there to help decay everything and to be the substance out of which life births.
Right.
So they've been present to everything. They connect everything. They're in everything, and they're digesting life and producing life. It's like there is no greater level of intimacy apart from probably water, which they're full of anyway. And it's just like, my God, they're everywhere and everything. They are an intelligence that can teach us about intimacy more than just about anything.
Yeah. And now back to the trees. So now you've been working to help repopulate these deforested areas, I'm assuming, in tropical areas. So from Brazil, Borneo, all over the planet. And so how the heck did you had a bit of a car crash, you're in London, and now it's just like, now you find yourself in Borneo, and then you're in Brazil and whatnot, and you've got reforestation programs, and I mean, I checked, and it's like almost 23 million trees that you've been able to replant with your organization. That's absolutely mind-boggling.
I think we're heading for 21 actually.
21. Oh, okay.
But
I just rounded it up a bit for you.
It's still. I mean, honestly, I thought we'd be in the hundreds of millions by now. I thought once people understood that trees were carbon made visible, we'd be hurling them in the ground. But the difficulty with the stickiness of human consciousness, the addiction to convenience is, and I also thought, wow, as climate change gets worse, people will get more and more and more generous. People get more frightened, they get less generous. It's extraordinary. So well, what happened was I rang a friend and I was like, I've got to do this thing and I don't know how to do it. Will you do it with me? And so she was my dance teacher, and I was like, look, we've got to do something around feminine consciousness, which I know is body based. So why don't we start with something dance wise? So we actually sat in this map of 5 choices, this change tool. We sat in it for like 2 years and danced it and followed the flows of energy and understood all our different capacities and trying to figure out how to build from that. Because to me, it was like that value system, that understanding had to underpin everything. Because basically in that, you're looking at the right leg, which is how we live, how we act. And okay, if there's in acupuncture, if there's an absence of energy, you don't stick a needle in it. You look for where that energy is held back. So the understanding in that system is there's always the exact amount of energy in a system needed to bring it back into balance. And if it's out of balance, you need to find out where it's stuck.
Yeah.
So you put your needles where you need the energy to start moving, and then the movement fills up the place that's empty or discharges the area that's stagnant, and then the flow of energy, health returns. So behaviorally, what I love about that is it's a shame-free model. Okay, if we're showing up like prize assholes, it's not because there's something wrong. It's not because we are prize assholes. It's because there's not enough energy in the system for us to be showing up in a balanced relationship. So then where's the energy stuck? Where's the deficit? Well, the deficit is in the feminine, because there's not enough energy in the human heart or in the human body to plug in to feel how things are. Why? Because there's too much trauma. There's just too much trauma there. There's too much trauma in the human body and the feminine body from what we've done to ourselves and what we've done to each other. There's too much conditioning pulling us away from who and what we really are. So because we were looking at it saying, well, if we were in balance, we wouldn't be destroying our planet in the first place. We shouldn't need to tell people to be planting trees, because we shouldn't need to be cutting the damn things down in the first place.
I know. Yeah.
You know, so we can yell as much as we want to, please will you plant trees, please will you plant trees, but if there's not enough energy in the system in order to be able to feel the truth of that and take action, it's not going to happen. So then how do we focus on energizing what's weak so that the energy is there to be able to make the change? So that's the experiment that TreeSisters is. So we didn't start planting trees until I think Christmas 2015. Our first 5,000 trees went into the ground in Project Green Hands India, which is where I started. So Green Hands was our first initiative. And then we started working with an organization called Synchronicity Earth in the UK to come up with a due diligence process, because one of the hardest things to do when you're looking for somewhere to plant trees is to find out who's going to do it well. Who's going to do it well? Who's planting the right trees? Is that appropriate for the soil? Are they doing it in a way that's good for communities? Are the communities leading? Is it, you know, what's the management? What's the governance? What's the accounting? I hadn't got a clue how to do any of that. And I'm not a traveler. So then it was like, okay, go find the best people on the planet who know how to do due diligence and get them to help us put together a system that we can then use to go out and find projects. Because what we wanted to do, what I was asked to do, was to create a portfolio of existing reforestation projects that would basically educate. So right now we've got forest corridors in the Atlantic rainforest of Brazil. That's a biodiversity endangered species project. We've got food forest in the Amazon with the Ashaninka tribe. We've got water tower management on Mount Kenya. We've got mangroves in Mozambique and Madagascar and West Papua. We've got community jungle in Nepal. We've got river restoration in India, and we've got orangutan peat swamp restoration in Borneo. So we've got a very, very broad range of different ways and means of using trees to rehabilitate their existing ecosystem so that it's educational. And each of them have got completely different social strategies and social benefits. Work with communities in different ways, work with women in different ways, support different endangered species, support different types of forest cover. Why? Because diversity is the root of strength. Always. Exactly. So we have diverse planting partners, diverse cultures, diverse ecosystems, all providing diverse ways in which trees restore everything, frankly. And we do that because we want people to understand, look, there's all these different ways in which trees benefit us massively. And so we then went, you know, over the last, so that would have been 2015, 2016, I think we started working with Eden Reforestation, then International Tree Foundation, and then We Forest and Aqua Verde and Health and Harmony. So bringing in these different partnerships where we become an aggregator of public funding. So Mary down the road giving £5 a month, and Bert giving $100 a month, and then eventually now companies starting to give percentage of their profits or put trees at checkout or whatever it is, gathering that money, splitting it up and sending it out so that everybody that donates to us gets to have their fingerprints on ecological restoration in every single one of those ecosystems. You know, we're moving, I think we're moving into the Congo on in another project that's all about peace and restoration between tribes, with Women's Environmental and Climate Action Network. We can I think we're starting in January. So we're constantly looking at who can we partner with and why, and where we've been moving over this last few years, because the world is now going carbon bonkers. I'm not going to dismiss it, but I'm going to sound like I'm going to dismiss it, because we don't do that. And the reason we don't do that is because we're so deeply working with indigenous wisdom that is looking at trees as conscious beings in a conscious world. And when you start monetizing around carbon, you're using exactly the same linear, top-down, mechanistic accounting brain that says, that tree is just carbon. And it's like saying, well, that human is just bone, and it doesn't look at the multifaceted benefits that tree is in its ecosystem, or that entire ecosystem is. let alone the fact that it's living and conscious.
Yeah.
Or how would we, how would we reforest if we were going to do it through an indigenous wisdom-led lens? So now we're looking at all our new projects and everything that we're doing through an indigenous lens of how do we actually reforest how the trees themselves would do it, or how indigenous peoples would do it, which means, everything that we're doing is evolving, all our thinking is evolving, and we're currently putting together an ethical tree growing framework that includes indigenous wisdoms to support everybody that's wanting to put money towards reforestation to think through a different lens.
Yeah. And like you were saying, the carbon credit thing, like it's one of these things is like, I'm going to, trade a carbon credit. So I'm polluting over here, but I'm going to plant 15 trees over here. So it's okay that I still pollute over here because I'm offsetting. It's just like, no, it's a bunch of bullshit as far as I'm concerned. Like, it's like, it just doesn't make sense.
There are ways in which they're doing it that is better. And so I'm not going to, it doesn't help to knock it, because it also does steer people towards thinking about it. But the problem is it has you think, what's the least I can do to feel better about myself, rather than what's the most we can do. And my analogy is like, your house is burning down and your neighbors come around with a watering can and go, well, I'm only responsible for that little flame over there. And you're just like, but my house is burning down, like the planet is burning. And people are going, well, let's see what I emitted last year. And it's like, I don't care what you emitted last year. Can you turn your organization into something that generates, massive generosity so that we can restore our planet? Like we're dying here, guys. Can we stop the accounting, and can we just start hurling money at this? Like, what are we here for? Are we here for piecemeal? Are we going to look at our kids and say, well, I did do offsetting last year? Or are you going to say, we changed our whole life? Yeah,
exactly. And what you said there too is diversity. I like that. The whole thing about diversity is that when you're like here in British Columbia, we have certain forests, not that many left, but old growth forests, where you have diversity, you have balance, you have everything kind of working in this beautiful balance, right? In the old growths. And they come in, it's all gets cut down. Reforestation comes in and plants one type of tree, it's like a palm oil
monoculture
thing. Monoculture here. So up behind my house here, 100 years ago, this was beautiful old growth, and it all got logged out, and then they replanted it probably 80 years ago. But I spent a lot of time in the bush up here, and sometimes I call it like Mordor, because there's trees and they're growing, but it's, they're all very tight together.
It's a crop,
and there's no light coming through, and it's just like everything down below is kind of dead. It's not the healthy forest that was there originally. I mean, coming and replanting, okay, but it's not, like it was. We don't have the diversity in there in the bush here that we had 100 years. It's not a forest. It's not a forest.
It's not a forest. It's a field.
Yeah.
It's not a thriving ecosystem. It's a crop.
Right.
80% of our old growth forest is gone. 80%. There's something like 82 countries have lost all their intact forest landscape that used to be forested countries. 82 countries. 15% of all tree species are on the absolute verge of extinction.
Yeah.
40% of the Amazon is either gone or degraded. That's a forest that's as big as the face of the moon. I mean, the speed with which we're chomping through our forest, I say, wow, collectively, given the fact that I started with absolutely no idea how to do this, 20 million trees isn't nothing. But when you understand that we're losing between 14 and 40 million trees a day, and that's not including disease, which is now wiping out every species on the planet pretty much. The olive trees of the Mediterranean are on their way out.
Yeah.
Banana trees, cacao trees. I'm sitting in an ecosystem where 5 of our core species here are all dying. Like, the trees are leaving. And why should they stay? We're not in relationship with them. We're not honoring them. We're not feeding them with our conscious awareness. We're seeing them as standing timber. We're seeing them as what we can get out of them. We're designed to be in relationship with them. And if we can do that, if we can start relating with them, I think we'd be amazed at what we can achieve.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think it's waking up. It's people being aware. I think what's happened to the planet here with COVID, some of our shaman friends say that, it's a nudge. It's kind of a nudge. They're kind of a smack or a nudge. The one thing that I've really noticed is that there's a lot more people outside and a lot more people in nature, which is actually, I think, a good thing. And people are like, I spent a lot of time up behind here hiking, and you'd meet maybe one or two people. Now there were, there were like 50, 60 people in there. And I said this the other day, people coming through the bush with babies in their backpacks, enjoying nature. Kind of like what they do in Japan. They call it tree bathing, right? They call it tree bathing in Japan, being in nature and taking in the nature. And it's that awareness, and people, I think, are becoming more aware. I mean, I definitely have been, and it's really interesting where Reiko and I, we go hiking, we'll go up at Whistler, we'll go up here, and there'll be a beautiful, we'll just stop and just touch the tree and just look and just spend a bit of time with the tree. And it's really, really powerful. It's very meditative. And we understand that it's a being, it's alive, and it's communicating with other trees and what, below us, the mushrooms and the mycelium and all
off
that.
planet.
We're in this. Yeah, it's an
The cosmic.
amazing experience just to stop and just enjoy, as opposed to marching through the forest because you've got only an hour for your workout because we've got to be on a Zoom call or whatever it is. Marching and march home is just touch a tree, look at a tree, just hang out in the forest. Take a deep breath, take some deep breaths and just enjoy ourselves. And it's amazing how things start to change when we do that. For me, anyway, it's been incredible.
And soft gaze, like ask a tree permission to go up to it, like stand, like feel the tree's energy field from a distance. Feel as you approach a tree, when you can feel its energy field, it's aware of you. When you get to the edge of its energy field in a way that you can feel, stop, ask permission, say hello. Apologize for all the time that you've walked past it without ever acknowledging it. Wait for it to say, yes, you can come in. And then when you go up to the tree, like sit there and soft gaze with your entire body. Give it your entire body and with your eyes, and just sit and wait. Wait for the moment that you can actually start to feel your energy field and its energy field interacting. Just like sitting with another human being, the depth of presence that you give to another human being allows a circuit of energy to start generating that is more than the pair of you. There's a third thing that happens in relationship. You can do it with trees, you can do it with grass, you can do it with the sky. But with trees, you'll find you can start to listen to them. You can start to ask questions, you can start to listen to them. I had a gorgeous moment, and it was outside a fast food restaurant the other day when a friend of mine was going in to get something, and there was this sad looking tree in the parking lot, just a tree just placed there again because it's supposed to look beautiful, no awareness of the fact that it's got, its roots are completely paved over, it's separate from everything else. And I went over to say hello, and I felt such surprise from this tree. Oh my God, somebody noticed me. Somebody's there. And it just came, its energy came straight down to be with me. And I was just like, yeah, I'm here. I'm really here with you. And I just stood there in deepest appreciation of the sacredness of this being. It's like turning up to a homeless person and giving them your full attention and just going, I get that you're utterly sacred. It changes the world.
It does, yeah.
When you find a fractured part of your bigger self and turn to it with love, it's no different from nature. We're part of nature. It's like this fractured part of nature suddenly realizing that we're part of. Nature is waiting. It's waiting for us to log back on, and we do it with our hearts.
Yeah.
I just need to,
wow.
My laptop is about to die. So you're gonna have to come back here and put pause in and just let me, I'm on 2%. I just suddenly realized, let me just do this.
You bet. Yeah, it's interesting when I go hiking up here, and if Mom and I we run in, like if it's a beautiful tree, we'll just go up and we'll just kind of touch it and hang out with it. And then I say anyai, right? Anyai, which is thank you in Quechua, I believe. Quechua, right? From the Andes, the language of the people down in the Amazon and language of the people in the Andes. And we just say anyai. And it's just a really cool. It's just really cool. It's just as a totally different.
Sorry about that.
Marching, no problem. As opposed to marching through the bush and just go up and touch the tree and go anyai, and I just thank you, and just there's something, I don't know. For me, there's something there, and I totally know what Claire is talking about. It's it's a very magical, and it changes your whole perspective. It changes your whole time in in the forest when you kind of appreciate what's around us. Yeah, you're back.
Yeah.
I'm back. I remember a particular day I was grieving like a lunatic. I cry a lot. Crying is my superpower. It's why I'm brave, because I allow the pain of the loss of everything to have its way with me. And what that does is it plugs me back into my courage and my creativity. But I was having a particularly distraught day. I was sobbing on the beach in Massachusetts, and I remember in one particular like wild sob turning around, and it was literally like the sky flooded into my chest and I couldn't stop it. And it was like the whole sky was love, and it entered me. And I went from like sobbing with grief about, I can't even remember what it was right now, to sobbing with a level of love and belonging that I didn't even know what to do with. Like I'd never experienced it before. It was almost too much. Like my chest couldn't manage it. And like I'd cried myself into an altered state, but in that altered state, truth was there. The truth of my indivisibility was there. And all of a sudden, like everywhere I turned, of course, you can't turn away from the sky. It's just there. And it was just pouring into me. And for like 3 days, even in the car, like I'm driving along and the sky is right there in front of me and it's pouring into my chest. And I'm like trying to manage the love and the belonging. And it stayed just the sky. It wasn't like I was experiencing the same thing with the trees. I mean, I have at different times had different experiences with nature, but I remember that one and just having this experience of, my God, the sky is loving all of us in every moment. It's like we're being kissed from head to toe. We're permeated with it. We're breathing it in. Love is present all the time in a level of immensity that has no end. How many of us ever have that experience or even know how to open to the love that life is? Like really know how to do that. It's, it's there. Nature's waiting. It's waiting. And we're on our phones going, oh.
I know. We're going deeper into our phones. Dev, do you have any questions, sir?
No, I'm just listening. This is awesome.
Yeah. It's I know. So how can people help? How can people help? I mean, I know there's a lot of different ways.
Hold the dream. There's many different ways, actually. I mean, there's obvious ways to donate, get involved. But the biggest thing you can do is question yourself. If I was going to park you in front of a group of 11-year-old climate activists right now, would you be able to say to them, yeah, we get what you're facing and we're doing everything we can?
Good question.
Would you be able, I've sat with climate activists and youngsters, and I've had children sobbing in my arms because their parents won't talk to them about the reality. Their parents will not own up to what they're facing. And these kids are terrified about what's coming and are sitting in a world where their parents think the better thing to do is to basically deny them the truth.
Yeah.
And so, it's like, get honest with yourself. Number one, get honest with yourself. Are you waiting for someone else to come and rescue you? Are you actually really facing up to what's coming? Indigenous peoples from all over the world met in Kauai in 2017, Indigenous leaders and shamans, and they did not realize that they all held the same timeline. These are the people that are communicating or in communion with Gaia all the time. They all had the same time frame, 2026. After that, they can't see anymore. They see catastrophic climate change before it, and then they can't see. So they're acting as if we've got 5 years left. Now, if you had 5 years left of habitable weather, what would you be doing with your life? Would you still be going, oh, I just need to make more money? Oh, I want to build a bigger company. Oh, I want an even bigger house. Oh, I need to, let's talk about putting an extension on, or let's figure out our next holiday. Like if you had to look at your kids and say, 5 years, guys, what should we do? I don't know what's coming. And the reason
things are changing pretty quickly. I mean,
we've passed all the tipping points. Like everybody's, the governments of the planet are still going, oh, when we pass the tipping point, it's like we passed the tipping points a long time ago.
Yeah, we did.
A long time ago.
We did.
So we're being lied to left, right, and center. We can't wait for the governments. That's not it. So if you're a scientist, you think it's over. If you are an awakened human being, and what I mean by that is one that understands that what we've been taught a human isn't what a human is. if you understand that we've got energetic capacities beyond anything that we've been taught, which is why indigenous people can change the weather, which is why indigenous people can put crystals in the ground and create water, which is why they can go to Fukushima. If you're the code, you can go to Fukushima and do ceremony and reduce radiation. We have no idea who and what we are, really, if we can log on to each other in such a way that we can become a bridge for a different level of consciousness. Because if we are nature, which we are, then we can interact with her in ways that we can't fathom. But because we're living in this dissociated state, we just think, oh, this just cause and effect.
Yes.
There's not just cause and effect. There's a whole other way of being in relationship that requires radical humility. The reason why I'm still in the game and haven't given up and gone, oh, we've got no more time, we can't change it, is because I believe if we've incarnated now, it's because we've got a role to play in the awakening.
Okay.
We've got a role to play in the awakening. And so that means it's all hands on deck for the wake up.
Right.
Because we don't know what we're capable of. I refuse to believe we've got 5 years. I won't go there. It's like, but what I do see of that timeline, because they're the ones who can see. I trust them more than I trust science. What I do know is that we're reaching the end of a cycle of humanity's behavior in this world. And if there is going to be anything coming from here, it needs to be representative of a completely different consciousness. That's got to be feminine consciousness. That's got to be interdependent consciousness, consciousness that is in humility and reciprocity. So I hold that vision of an awakened humanity that didn't need to exterminate itself and take everything else along with it because greed won. Like, I'm just not playing that game. But it requires us to be willing to go, who am I being? So that's the first thing, because if you're willing to acknowledge the fact that who you're being is a convenience-oriented creature that is valuing money more than life, and who doesn't actually have anything to say to a group of climate youngsters whose life they don't even see that they have one, then is that enough for you?
Right.
Are you satisfied to be that, or are you desirous of an incarnation where you gave it all you've got to be part of the biggest change and the recreation of a human identity that we've ever seen? Am I going to be part of the evolutionary bounce rather than the evolutionary crash? Now, if you are going to be that person, then it's about looking at, it's like radical honesty. Okay, who am I in my life? What is my value system? What do I really care about? And then what do I love? What do I love? What do I love enough to want to protect? What am I going to do about that? So, in my world, I want to see a regenerative financial system, a regenerative economy. We've got to flip it. We can't continue with an extractive economy. Okay, what role can I play with my limited knowledge in that? Okay, well, who do I need to be talking to start to I'm a charismatic. I'm a voice in this world. Okay, where do I need to be to have the greatest influence in terms of waking people up? What can I do about that? What are your skills?
One of our friends, John Perkins, wrote a book called The Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and we interviewed him about a month or two ago, and he basically said exactly what you're saying. We're living in a death economy.
It's a death economy.
We need to wake up, right?
Yeah.
We need to wake up.
And he was part of that. He was part of driving that. As part of his own awakening, and he he lives with that as his like internal sackcloth that is scratching him all the time. So that scratching that he has to live with causes him to stay awake, like to the impact of our behaviors and our choices. So then my dream is a regenerative economy. The step towards that for me is where you cannot consume without giving back, which is one other thing that TreeSisters is doing. Every organization, every company needs to be regenerating something.
Yes.
Now, the three biggest needs to me really is water, soil, and forest. Soil is massive in terms of carbon sequestration. Forest, if we don't, we're talking rain creators and climate moderators. If we lose our tropical rainforest, we have accelerating climate change that will never stop, because she uses the hottest band of our planet with the tropical trees to cool us down. If that desertifies, the Amazon is at its absolute tipping point now. It's heading for savanna. Well, if that happens, we're done.
Yeah,
we're done.
Yeah.
Because we're losing the ice caps. So to me, every company needs to be restoring tropical forest. Every company.
Yeah.
And why else a tropical forest? Because we've got to get the carbon into the ground, not into the oceans. So another reason, I'm a water woman. Like, I would be doing water projects all day long. But the problem is the acidification and warming of the oceans is killing everything. I mean, plastics, horrifying. Poisoning, horrifying. Overfishing, horrifying. And then there's the oceans themselves, where if they pass a point of acidification and heat, they're dead anyway. So that carbon needs to go into terrestrial lockdown, and the cooling needs to happen away from the fact that the heat is being sunk into the oceans. Again, it's got to be terrestrial. And it can't just be geoengineering and, let's do algae and let's do mirrors in the sky and let's do more metals and poisoning. It's got to be living systems, working with living systems.
Right.
So can your company start to donate a large chunk of profits towards trees? Can you see yourselves as educators of your customers? Can you think beyond your customers as people to extract money from and to actually educate restoration from? Can you include them in a goal that actually has them understand that they are part of a community that has means to make a huge difference at the level of restoration? Like, we're trying to help companies redream themselves into creators of a new way of being, where, to me, corporate greatness really needs to bow fully towards how much you give back, not what you give your shareholders, but what you give back to the planet. That has to happen.
It has to happen.
It has to happen. So then do you want to be a leader in that? These are all ways. And then obviously go to treesisters.org/give and start giving as much as you can every month. We take monthly, and every three months we give to all of our partners. Let us plant for you. Let us plant for each of you. Everybody that hears this, if you're not planting, then what are you doing with the heating that you're doing on this planet? Every day you pick up your laptop.
That's right. Okay, I guess on that, we should probably wrap her up. Hey, Deb. So what you do, let them plant for you. So Tree Sisters, let them plant for you. So we'll put in all of the information. Hey, Devin, you want to wrap it up?
I got to say, that was so inspiring. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and we'll have to have you back again. Guys, if you want to know more, we'll put everything in the link in the description, as my dad said there. But other than that, is there any final thoughts that you have for us today? And thank you so much for sharing this knowledge and coming on the show today.
Yeah.
Final thoughts. Just I want to express my gratitude to the pair of you, and for having me here, and for being awake, and for caring. I want to express my gratitude to everybody who's listening that is now going to go to treesisters.org/give and actually start doing something meaningful.
Yes.
I want to thank all of you out there that are already doing things that are meaningful, that are already wide awake, and to say, those of you that are sort of immobilized, going, oh my God, even the fact of being willing to be awake is being the change in this world. It is. And the more, right now, the more love any of us can bring really matters, because we're in the midst of such wild social manipulation and separation that's fracturing the fabric of our being. And actually, every forest will tell you the only way to stay resilient is through dramatic, unconditional togetherness. And so actually what really, really matters is how we hold each other, how we support each other, how we find what unites us rather than divides us, how we love each other. And so right now, my deepest, most sincere wish is, regardless of anything else, remember what matters. What matters is love, and who you are when you come from love. And if you don't understand anything else about what the hell to do in this world, just try and live in your heart, and then say thank you to the one who's given us everything.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks so much for what you're doing. You're just a total inspiration, and we could talk for hours and hours. But
I'll come back.
Running out of storage on this one.
I can do endless talking. We can talk about more little green men.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to hear more about the green men. Okay, well, that's great. Well, thank you so much. And like Devin said, we're going to put everything in, and for people to donate and help and listen and share. And Yeah. So thank you so much.